Welcome, everybody, to the first of our CEO interview series of 2021. We're wishing you a happy new year, a healthy new year. I am so happy to be joined by my friend, Dan Rozensweig. Hey, Dan.
How are you, Jason? It's great to see you again and one day in person.
Yes, it's always great to be with you and someone I've learned so much from. So for those of you that are joining us, again, thank you for keep returning to the series. And for those of you that are joining us from the first time, I'm Jason Nazar. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Comparably. We are a platform to help companies with their employer brand, recruitment, marketing, company culture. And we do this series to be able to talk to incredible CEOs like Dan and really have an if I knew then conversation. So looking back on the most important lessons learned of the leadership lessons. And so this is an open and transparent conversation. And for all of those of you that are really just pushing forward in your career and your professional life, this will be an amazing hour. I've got to get to know Dan over the past couple of years. And Dan, you've been one of the leaders and CEOs that even though we haven't spent that much time together in person, I've just learned a tremendous amount from. And so Chegg has been one of the massive success stories of the last 5 years, and certainly been even propelled by, a post-pandemic world. I think most people are going to know and love the brand Chegg, but for those folks that maybe learning about it for the first time, would love in your own words to hear a bit more about the business and how you describe it today.
Well, first of all, thank you, Jason, because I think our big turnaround started the last time we actually had one of these one-on-one conversations, which meant a lot to me because at the time, companies, they have their perceptions. And at the time we were perceived as a textbook rental company. So it was e-commerce, highly capital intensive, 4-day-a-year relationship, rent return. And we really hadn't even started our march into digital in any significant way. Our public offering, as it's easier to say now, it wasn't so much fun to say it back then, was considered maybe the worst in Silicon Valley history. We priced it $12.50. We closed the first day at $9.38, and we can get into what public humiliation on CNBC and on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange feels like on your 25th wedding anniversary, where your wife and daughters are on the floor watching you. But what we said then, and what I said to you, was we think that there's an opportunity to transition from e-commerce to a subscription business, from a product company to a platform company. And our objective was focus on asking only one question, which is, if we were to put the student first, what could we do for them that no one else is doing? Because when we reviewed the higher education landscape, it was very clear that everybody had a stake in making sure that the student paid more, not less, had fewer classes, not more classes. The curriculum didn't adjust to the modern day economy. And so every step of the way, the student had a toll or a problem or an issue. And then what it resulted in was, 44 million Americans with $1.6 trillion in college debt. The average income of a college graduate, believe it or not, was $25,000 a year. And they were graduating with $38,000 a year if they graduated at all. And so we set out to say, what are the biggest pain points that modern students have that the institutions aren't solving for, that parents may not be able to solve for, or may not even be involved in their child's life or education? And we learned a lot. We learned that the average age of a student in the United States is 25. The average age and demographic of an online student is a 30-year-old woman with a job and a child trying to better her life. We learned that 40% of all students were working 30 hours a week or more while they were going to school. And we learned that 43% didn't even graduate. And so when you realize that the landscape are hardworking young people who are taking giant financial risks to better themselves, and the system wasn't working for them, it turned out that the opportunity for Chegg was just much bigger than we ever imagined. And every day we've been trying to tackle it. And you've seen what's happened, which is we went from a company that almost went bankrupt to a company today that I think is worth about $12 billion in market cap. And we believe we're just getting started. And we're proud of the work we've done, but it's sad that this is the kind of work that has to be done to support the modern day student because no one else was supporting them.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things from an outside perspective is to see how beloved Chegg actually is by students.
Yes.
To see what they say on social media, to see how people talk about it, to see how they talk about it being so vital. I'd say probably, that's a group of folks that can be very vocal when they're unhappy about something. And
Yes.
it's really just one of the most beloved businesses. What are the things and we'll get to, I think, some of the more like big macro future looking things. What are you most proud of that the business is doing today? What do you feel like is the secret sauce of how you're just executing and delivering value to your customers on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis?
So, I think a lot of the CEOs that you talk to and a lot of the audience that is listening likes to hear things like mission-driven companies. And, when I ran Guitar Hero as the CEO, I'm not sure what the mission was. It was just fun as hell. But I think the thing I'm most proud of is that Chegg has never strayed from its mission to put the student first. And so I would say that our ability to survive Amazon coming in and trying to put us out of business, or an IPO where, we were valued at a certain point after we went public less than the value of the cash and the assets that we had. The reason we could survive that is because we never lost sight of what the mission was, which is the student's got a bigger problem than we do, and no one's addressing it. And by staying focused on their needs, we survived, and now we're thriving. And I think so. I'm most proud of the fact that every day we shut out the noise of the naysayers, and we focus exclusively on what are their problems. And one of the things that makes it easier is the business model, which is when you have a platform, when you're online, if you own the customer and you own the data and you own the transaction and you own the channel of distribution and you own all your content, you have the ability to solve any bad problems immediately, because you can watch the student behavior, you can listen to them, they can communicate with you. You don't have to wait for some other channel to distribute it. You don't have to wait for some other product manufacturer, content provider to change it, who may have another agenda. So as a result of being able to focus exclusively on higher quality products and being more responsive and having all these analytics, we can see the value of constantly investing in the ROI on it. And that's why we have a model where 91 cents of every dollar, falls is gross margin, and 50 cents of every EBITDA dollar becomes free cash flow. I've never seen a model like this, and it's all because of the platform that's being built and the teams that we have who are dedicated to making sure that we're actually solving the problem we claim to solve.
Yeah.
So I'd say that's what I'm probably most excited about. I mean, the way we do it, we have math, we have writing, we have homework help, STEM classes, anything that you need where you feel like you need to get unstuck, Chegg is there. And when you have a student base who, has a family or has a job or has them both, or has none of those, but is exhausted because of all the things that they need to do or all the elements in their life, and you're available for them 24/7, on demand, high quality, anything that they need help with, boom, we can do it. And if we don't have it in our database of 45 million plus questions, we can get it for them in less than 4 hours. And no one else has built a business like this. And that's, turns out, what students needed.
I'd love to get more of your thoughts on, what companies do right, transforming from, traditional businesses to digital. Obviously, what you did was miraculous in the time you did it. When I sold my last company, DocStock, to Intuit,
Yep.
that period that I was there, they were transitioning to really bring QuickBooks online. And it was really fascinating to see, selling software in big box retailers with a one-time purchase to the mode of trying to get to a subscription service. Obviously, they did exceedingly well there. But a lot of companies are late to the game. A lot of folks have not nearly been anywhere as successful as Chegg has. Like, what's that playbook for success? Like, what mistakes are leaders making, and what the folks that are doing it really well, what are they just nailing in the process?
It's an amazing question. And there are now some really good examples of companies that didn't do it. There are examples of companies that did do it early and are thriving. And then there are companies that are doing it now that felt like it was late to the game, but it turns out it's never late to the game to try to do the right thing. And so the model for Chegg was actually Adobe. So I was very fortunate to be on the board of Adobe, still am. Shantanu Narayan is one of the best CEOs, period, any industry, any time, any generation. Was handled. So COVID has been really difficult for a lot of reasons. Health issues, fear issues, economy issues, those things. But the economic crisis of 2008 in a lot of ways was scarier, minus the health issues, because we were told the financial system was gone forever. The US economy might go away, right? We didn't have the technology we have today to work remotely to do what we're doing now. And Adobe was a packaged goods software company who built the most remarkable tools for creatives. The problem is they built it for media companies who were going out of business, publishing companies who were going out of business. So here you had an incredibly successful company who had reached an all-time stock high of $47 a share before Shantanu took over. The economics drops down to like $8 a share. And he made the decision to say, we're going to the cloud, we're going online, we're going to become a subscription model. We are going to, instead of coming out with an amazing product every 2 years, we're going to have to come out every second of every day and make our product better. They had no technology, no experience, no expertise to do any of that. But the quality of his commitment, the seriousness of it, got the board involved in a way to back it. And the fear is, you accelerate the decline of your current business with the hope and belief that the new business will one day be bigger. And that's where most companies get afraid and get stuck. And when they do, then the inevitable is a decline that you can't get out of. And, I've worked at companies that have done that. I've been part of the teams that had that fear. And I didn't want to have that same fear at Yahoo. So when I watched him do that at Adobe, or John Donahoe when he decided to split eBay and PayPal and liberate them, each one to be their own company, and Intuit, as you point to, Brad Smith, it's what I call these refounders, people who didn't found the company, but were in the seat at the time that the company needed to be refounded. And they're brilliant. Jeff Weiner at LinkedIn are examples. These are people who, in the worst moment, made a commitment to the future without outward fear. I'm sure they all had inner fear like I do. And then committed to it. And they said, look, let's bet on the inevitable. The inevitable is more people need the services we have. Adobe said, look around. There's more creatives than ever before. We've got Instagram. We've got all these people creating stuff. So we know there's more creatives. Maybe they're just not the historical ones we serve. How do we become less expensive, more available? Allow people to use what they need when they need it, not just be forced to buy everything, not charge $6,000, but rather let you pay per month as you need it. And now they're worth $240 billion as opposed to $8 billion. And so that was our model. And so at Chegg, we said, look, we know textbooks are going to go away. That was inevitable. So we said, how do we bet on the inevitable? The inevitable is more students are going to need more help on more things at more time. They're going to have less support from their families, that more of them are going to be immigrants or from families who historically had not had support in academics to get into college or to support that journey, that it needed to be more on demand, which is available when they could do it, not when somebody assigned it. Like, think of schools as movie theaters. You got to go pay a lot of money to see something you don't really want to see, and pay for food you don't really want to get, and it's really inconvenient and very expensive and leaves you wanting, as opposed to Netflix, which said watch what you want, when you want it, where you want it, with overwhelming value from your couch and eating kale, right? Very different situations. Well, education, we believe that that's what education needed to do. So we need something inexpensive, incredibly high quality, super comprehensive, on demand, accurate, and walked you through every step so that you could master the subject and learn it. If you want to get an answer, you can call a friend, go to Google. Like, there's 1,000 places to do that. But if you actually want to understand the principles of how it works, so we did multi-content, multi-modality, we've not raised our prices in 10 years, and we just keep adding more value. And so that's what Chegg has become as a result of serving the needs of the student. And so I look around and I was like, look at Disney today. Disney had every reason to fearing changing its model. In-person theme parks, advertising-based businesses on network television, ESPN, shoving cable companies to force them to pay the bills. Well, they had strong leadership and a board that said, you know what? The future is the future. We may have to take a hit in the short term. We may have to pay a lot of money, but if we don't invest in the future now, we're not going to have one. And that is the difference between companies that succeed over a longer period of times and continue to evolve and companies that quit. And if you look at the companies that quit or wait too long, a lot of them were the print companies or the news companies. So look, technology can be brutal on people's lives and careers. And that part we haven't figured out how to solve yet. But if you look now, there's 320 million people in America. Before the COVID, we had more people working than ever before, maybe not with the right wages in all the different situations or the right benefits and the right support. But it means that technology has created more jobs than it's lost. The challenge is in that period where you're in that group where the job is lost, what do you do about it? And that's where education plays a big role. And that's where, comparably plays a role with helping you go to companies that are for the future, not for the past. And for Chegg, it's where we're going as a company. And so I think, my message is it's scary. You don't know. I mean, John Donahoe is now the CEO of Nike, once told me, he said, look, when you're a CEO, by its nature, every decision you're asked to make is 50-50, meaning there is no right or wrong. He said, the challenge is convincing people that whatever decision you make is the right one and convincing them so much that it is that they figure out how to make it right. Because in the moment, how the hell do you know? And you'll never know the road not taken. So that's what we did at Chegg. We just said, you know what? Andy, my CFO, was brilliant. He said, I'm going to go out and tell Wall Street 3 years from now, we're going to be growing at 30% and have at least 25% margins and this percentage of free cash flow. And he said, it's our job between now and then to do that. And once we had a North Star, we could do it. But look, it wasn't as courageous because Amazon came in, dropped the prices, our stock went to nothing. It was either die or go all in, and we went all in.
Yeah. Well, I think that's unbelievably. I love that advice by John Donahoe. You've kind of had this Renaissance man career, like ZDNet publishing, Guitar Hero CEO of Yahoo. Then you go into higher education. I want to go backwards to, when you were in school. What was your why? What was driving? Was it your parents had big expectations for you? Obviously, you've charted a path on a career that a lot of people could only dream of. And so
in hindsight, right?
Yeah.
And so it's an interesting story. So I like to tell the story this way, which is I grew up in a place called Dobbs Ferry, New York, from 0 to 10. My father had left at a very young age. Was raised by a single mom. I have a brother. My brother's amazing, but didn't go to college. How did I end up as a CEO of an internet company? And, he moved to Chicago and does his career, which is marvelous. He works at his son's school as a janitor. And so we took very different paths from same mother, same family. And, one of the lessons from that is I always say, so how many of you ever heard of Dobbs Ferry? Most people never. And so I said, well, so I got to be like the internet guy that came out of Dobbs Ferry. And I was like, well, who else came out of Dobbs Ferry? Oh, yeah, Mark Zuckerberg. So nope, that guy. So I said, but when I was 10 and my mom got remarried, I moved to Scarsdale, which was a wonderful environment to grow up in. I mean, talk about privilege. That's about the most privileged environment in the East Coast that you can grow up in. Public school education system is great. Families are focused on education. Most people go on a higher education. So that was very fortunate for me to have been put in that situation. And so I say, so more famous people will have come out of Scarsdale than Dobbs Ferry. So let me just narrow it in on my graduating class of 1979. Who else graduated? Oh, yeah, Aaron Sorkin, Few Good Men, Social Network, West Wing. So not even the most important person in my graduating class. I said, how many of you ever heard of Hobart College? Hobart William Smith? Almost nobody. I was like, all right, so I got to be one of the people that came out of Hobart William Smith. I graduated with Abigail Johnson, whose family owns Fidelity, and she's now the president and CEO of Fidelity and has done an extraordinary job taking it. And my message to people is there's always going to be somebody taller, shorter, better looking, uglier, smarter, richer, more privileged, less privileged. And that the lesson that took me too long to learn is just be the authentic me. Try to like the skin that I'm living in and optimize around the strengths that I have, as opposed to worrying about everybody else in my life or being jealous of so-and-so, because there's always going to be so-and-so that is got something that you wish that you had. So that was sort of, so when I was in college, I wasn't thinking any of that. Everybody from Scarsdale went to a 4-year school. And, you know, I went to the best one that I could get into. You know, I drank my way through college. So my ambition was to, you know, survive. And then around senior year, it became clear to me, particularly when my mother and stepfather told me that they weren't going to stay together, that I needed to get my act together and be employable. So I didn't really have any ambition. So when people say, Dan, did you know in college that you were going to go run some of these big internet companies? I was like, there wasn't an internet. There wasn't a mobile phone. So, you know, my experiences when I look back on, and, you know, to your question, the 20-year-old you, life is serendipity. Very few people, maybe Stacey Abrams, but very few people can map out their future and get it right. There are too many unknowns. There are too many variables. There are too many things that you don't experience. And once you do, change your opinion on things or change your confidence on things. And so my view is life is serendipity, which is you got to take things as they come. And next is you got to be open to saying yes. You have to be courageous enough to say yes to things. I unfortunately didn't say yes to almost anything until I was 40. And it really wasn't when Terry Semmel said to me, he said, Dan, do you want to be an 80-year-old guy sitting on your porch in Scarsdale saying, what if? Or do you want to be a 40-year-old guy saying, here's how we can change the world? Which guy are you? Well, you know, unfortunately, men have stupid egos. I had one. And I was like, well, how do I say no to that? But it took that kind of prodding to finally get me to have the courage to be an entrepreneur rather than an executive. And so I tell people, be open to saying yes. Don't worry if you're the perfect person for the job, because there is no perfect person for any job. And embrace the opportunity, be present. Don't doubt it. Don't keep questioning yourself, because if you leave out, if you question yourself, you don't fully commit, it's hard enough to be successful when all the circumstances are perfect, but they rarely are. And so imagine how hard you make it for yourself by not fully committing, by not being present, by not embracing it all with whatever it is. Problems come up. You know what they are? They're problems. You deal with it. Don't add drama where drama isn't necessary. And these are the things I've learned along the way that I wish I had known, because I panicked about everything. I walked away from amazing opportunities. I didn't invest in things I could have. I didn't join companies, you know, and I still make that mistake from time to time. And what I've learned from the best, by observing them, by watching them, by asking them, is be open, be available. Life is serendipity. Whatever you do, commit to it. Play to your strengths. Don't try to improve every one of your weaknesses. As you get older, it's really hard to fix weaknesses. They're weak for a reason, or you would have fixed them already. So find environments in where what you do well are the thing that is necessary, and then commit and kick ass.
So I'm a huge believer in that. I think that people have outsized returns in their career by doing something or a small set of skills really extraordinarily. And then, as you said, matching those skills to the right context where they're rewarded for them. In fact, the second or third question I ask on every single job interview I do is, what's your work superpower? So, you know, I'm going to ask you the same thing. Like early on in your career, like when you were first starting out, what was that superpower that you had in the early version of Dan, you know, your mid-20s, that helped move you forward? And what would you say is your biggest work superpower today?
So let me set up the context so people understand when I talk about serendipity and all this stuff, which is my first job was selling word processors door to door for Pitney Bowes. The problem was I was laid off in the first 2 hours of my very first job ever. And because Pitney Bowes decided to go out of the business, they said 999 employees are gone. I was 999. Now, fortunately, they paid me a week's salary and a month's severance. So I don't know how many people got $1,100 an hour in their first jobs. But then I went back to my second choice, which was actually my first choice, but didn't pay as much. And I needed the money because with my parents splitting up, I needed to get my own apartment and afford it right away. And even though student debt was not a lot back then, I still had to finish paying that off. So I went back to Ziff Davis, which again, completely serendipity, you never know. And I was supposed to go sell classified advertising for Road and Track and Car and Driver and Psychology Today and Stereo Review, all these things called magazines for you listeners. They were these print things, sold advertising in. And I got there on the first day and everybody that hired me was no longer in those departments. They had all been moved in that 2-week period to this new group called the Computer Magazine Division. And that's how I got into technology. And instead of selling advertising, I was in circulation. And so I think my superpower came from just dealing with issues as they come, not complaining about it. I mean, my mentor, may rest in peace, Bill Campbell, you know, he said to me, once you know you've been screwed, you have 2 choices: quit or shut the F up and fix it. So I would say that I think the superpower that I've tried to develop is not complaining about it and just dealing with the facts as they are and trying to leave it better than it was when I got there. And that has served me incredibly well, because what employer doesn't want somebody who doesn't complain, but instead tries to fix the situation? And so every boss I ever had would have or has tried to hire me again at some point. And I'm grateful for that. But I would say that, you know, that's something that I learned, which is once you know what the facts are, bitching about it never solved a thing. So if you're not going to fix it, leave. Let somebody who can fix it or wants to fix it, because a lot of people depend on it being fixed, or fix it. And I would say that's still how I think about it today. When Amazon came after us, or when the textbook rental model wasn't going to be the model of the future, I could complain or work with my team to figure out what do we do as a result of it. And it yielded Chegg being a much more valuable, much more important, much more influential company.
Yeah. All right. So let's do the time machine. And you answered this a bit already of, you know, saying yes and jumping on more opportunities. But if you could take a time machine back into your 20s and you could give that version of yourself any advice, what would it be and why?
There's a lot, but you can't go backwards. So what I would say is trust your instincts and figure out a way to manufacture confidence in yourself. So the reason that most people don't say yes is because they're afraid. And I spent too much time finding clever ways to look good saying no. And if I had used that same amount of time finding the one way to say yes, I would have been a lot better off a lot sooner.
What were you most afraid of? Because was it that you'd miss out on an opportunity, that, you know, people, that you wouldn't be able to do something? Like what was the fear that you felt like you had early on in your career?
Well, first of all, there's a lot of it is imposter syndrome, right? What if they find out that I can't? The second thing is, what if I fail? Like, then what? I know how to do this. I don't like this, but I know how to do it. It's easier to bitch about it, but do it. And, you know, embarrassing my family, myself, by screwing up. Just general fear. You know, it's hard to be successful if you don't have confidence. Confidence breeds success, and success breeds confidence, like a chicken or an egg or a Chegg scenario. And what I would say, you're asking me what I wish I had known. What I would tell myself is make the bet, commit to it, and whatever the outcome is, but don't let the outcome happen to you. Influence the outcome. And I wish I had done that sooner. And I really didn't do that until I was 40.
All right. So let's take the time machine into your 40s. You're now been a CEO, a COO. What advice do you give to yourself in your 40s, whether it's, professional or personal?
I would say, again, what you learn is some of the old adages. There's a reason people have said these things for years, which is, Terry Semel had these great quotes, which was, you don't have to be the smartest person in the room. You just have to know who is on the subject you're trying to make a decision on. That takes a lot of pressure off you to have every answer. The second thing is, you don't need to act like the most important person in the room, because everybody in the room knows who's the most important person in the room. So you don't benefit from doing those things. So the flip side of that is, you got to trust the people around you. And when you're younger and you're the youngest person to get a lot of jobs, you basically, of the many mistakes that I have and others have made, is you describe success and then you prescribe to the person exactly how to do it, because you only know how you've done it. And what you learn when you get older is you describe success so that people know what the movie looks like, how it's supposed to end, but you don't prescribe how they do it. You let them figure out the way that they're most capable of doing it. There's not one way to do anything. So the goal as an older manager is to figure out, how do you get the authentic to do what they do best to get to the goal that you're looking for. And that is a very big shift. It takes you away from micromanaging. It takes you away from being that manager that everybody hates to work for because they're telling me what to do all day. And so I would think in the 40s, you start to learn to evolve, to hire better people, to trust them more, to encourage them more, to course correct them when necessary. But it's not about babysitting them. Instead, it's about figuring out how to get the best out of them. And one of the things I learned in my 50s was the way you get the best out of them is you ask them. And so you ask, on interview questions, I ask on everybody that I interview, how do you want to be managed? To be the best, most authentic, most successful, most happy, most committed you. How do you want us to manage you? What's important to you? And younger, I was like, I don't give a shit what's important to the company, and therefore we're going to do this. And you can bully things only for so long. They don't sustain themselves. And I think in this modern generation, and with sites like Comparably, who let people know what they're getting into, worth it.
Yeah, I think this is, it's even the way that, I was trying to manage folks 15 years ago in my 20s is so dramatically different, than today. And it's a challenging balance to find, because I think, to your point, it's really kind of shepherding folks and just being a guide. I don't think, millennials and Gen Z are a generation that particularly respond well to things like tough love that, probably you and I got more motivated by. And I think trying to figure out how to best support people to be the best version of themselves, it's like the most talented generation ever. And I think from my perspective, someone not nearly as
motivated.
Yeah.
The generation is smart. They're motivated, but you know what? They've been screwed by everybody along the way. If you went to college, you're likely broke, right? I mean, can you imagine a scenario where you're told you're an adult, but you have to live in a dorm? You only have to live in a dorm because they want to charge you for it. You have to eat the school's food because they want to charge you for it. You can only take a class when it's convenient for the professor, not when it's convenient for you. And you've lived in a world where everything else comes to you. And so even when you go to the cash machine, the average student takes out $10. They get charged $3 to take it out. I mean, these young people who are trying to improve their lives, who are investing in themselves, who are working their asses off, they're getting screwed by everybody along the way. And why would they respond to that? But I think it's everywhere and everything, and even in sports, right? The coaches that do best are the ones that embrace how to get the best out of their athletes and as a team, rather than scare the shit out of them. Doesn't work. Probably never worked. It's not sustainable.
So I'd love to stay on this theme of higher education for a little bit. And you said something before we started the interview that I thought was so incredibly thoughtful, that the debate that we're having now about higher ed is probably the wrong one. It shouldn't be about how much is subsidized. It should be how much value folks are getting from it.
That's right.
And, I got an MBA, I went to law school, very fortunate for those experiences. I felt, and I've talked a lot about for a long time, that the grand bargain of education is more and more dissipating.
Right.
And you have a lot of economists that say, oh, look, we haven't had any inflation. That's why we can keep interest rates so low. Well, no, there's been massive inflation in healthcare and housing and in education.
Right.
Not even to go back as far
The
as
3 things you have to pay for that you can never not have.
Yeah. I mean, I went to the UC system. I went to public schools all the way through grad school, and I paid $1,500 a quarter, in 2000, right? It's not 1979. In 2000.
That, by the way, before Chegg started, would only be the cost of the textbooks.
Exactly. And so, I don't know what folks, like, what do you do today if you're asked to leave undergraduate with $200,000 in student loans? And when you have that degree, it's not meaningfully changing your earning potential for that first entry level job. And so,
the first 10 years, the math shows it's for the first 10 years.
Yeah. And so where do we go from here? Like, what's the solution? Because this isn't sustainable. And as you said, it's just going to lead to a lot more anger and disappointment and frustration on a whole lot of folks' parts. And it's not something, it's going to become something that's a privilege for people that have means, not something that's actually key and necessary to further your career.
Actually, it's even worse, which is when it was only a privilege, at least the people that didn't get a degree didn't have permanent debt that you can't even write off, right? College loans are the only debt you can't write off, ever. You can't declare bankruptcy. So when 43% of every student that goes into higher ed never finishes a degree, and overwhelmingly they've taken on debt, they're actually worse off than they would have been had they taken nothing and no debt. So the question, Jason, to your excellent point, is what is the question we should be asking? I think we want to ask, in a modern society driven by the impact of technology, what is it that we need the modern workforce to be effective in, educated in, and which jobs will they last longer, be well paid, come with benefits? And how do we provide that education to the broadest swath of people, independent of income, independent of race, independent of immigration status, any of those things? And so the question we keep asking, which is important too, is why is college so expensive? It does not need to be. Let's be clear. It's because we're supporting institutions that were not built to be at this scale, on a system that was not built to serve a diverse group of people. They were built to serve a homogeneous group of people who live near where they were, to serve the economy of where they were. But now that we have a global economy based on technology, the curriculum needs to evolve. It needs to be more available, which means it needs to be on demand and online. We can't make people have to take 4 or 6 years off from their lives and accumulate debt before they can even pay it back. We need to acknowledge what modern America looks like. And the students are older. They have less accumulated wealth. 25% of the US population in higher education already has English as their second language. And the way we teach and what we teach doesn't scale for the modern economy. And so it needs to be more hybrid, utilizing technology. We never should have a situation where you can't get into a class that you need to graduate. How does that even make sense? I'm the customer, right? That's me paying you, the retail store, for clothing you won't give me, but you still take my money up front, and then you give it to me well past the time that I needed it. Or why am I forced to take a series of classes that someone said 50 years ago were the classes necessary for society and haven't modernized? So in the last 50 years, the number of students taking STEM has increased by 50%. That's because the students are demanding it. And so what we need is an education system that's responsive to the students. They're older, they have children, they have jobs, they can't leave their homes, they can't take 4 years off from their lives. A small subset can. And yes, that's more elite, and I'm sorry about that. But the way that we're going to get the majority of Americans to be employable and high-paying jobs that have benefits that will be sustainable is to actually give them skills-based content. And it's what we refer to as learning to earn. We need a whole generation. If 50% of all high school students don't go on to college, what is the pathway for them to be employable at something that doesn't get crushed during the pandemic? I mean, it is remarkably scary what percentage of the population was really negatively affected, and the part that wasn't was positively affected, except for the health issues. I mean, if you look at how these companies have grown and employability and all these things, and so I'm not saying that people don't want those jobs. Those people want those jobs, should have them. But what we ought to do is figure out, we have a free education system. It's called K through 12. Why aren't we reviewing that curriculum and saying, how do we teach people how to use modern tools? Mm-hmm. You don't have to learn to code. It would be great if you could. I don't know how to code. Majority of my employees don't know how to code. Engineers know how to code. And now we're coming up with, software that doesn't even need coding. But you need people to understand finance and understand business. If we're trying to educate people to be productive, employable, generate income, and allow them to live the lives they want to live, doing the things they want to do, then we need to review the curriculum and how much time and how we assess it. So what you're seeing now is, of the three people in the process, the student, the school, and the employer, the two that are moving the fastest are the two that need it the most, the student and the employer. And the institution is being pushed out. So during the pandemic, not shockingly, most schools were flat to down. Community colleges were way down because those are the people that needed to have a job to pay, lost a job, couldn't pay. But what schools were online, not-for-profit, grew 30%. Why? Because they're built for the modern age. Mm-hmm. They cost less, they teach at a time of convenience. And so we need to rethink what we teach, how we teach it, how long it takes to assess it, and what the ROI is. And so the cost is commensurate with what the return is. So even Chegg is getting into that business with Thinkful, where we're actually doing ISAs, we're doing income sharing agreements. 1 out of every 2 students uses an income sharing agreement, where if you don't finish the class in the 5-month or 6-month period of time, and you don't get a job in the space more than $40,000 a year, you don't have to pay us. We're going to take the risk. Where are the institutions designed to serve the audience serving them? They're not. Where are the people taking risk along with you? If I promise you this outcome, then why aren't I taking part of that risk? And the school takes no risk because the money gets paid for. The schools respond to who pays them. And right now, the federal government pays them through loans through the students. So all of that needs to be real.
So when you think about the role that Chegg's going to play, you talked about that example of 3 years ago and your CFO putting that North Star out there.
Yep.
What's Chegg going to look like 3 to 5 years from today, and how will your business be kind of vital in that transformation?
So I learned a lesson when I was at Yahoo, which is, people would say, is Yahoo a technology company, a media company? And I was like, it doesn't matter to the consumer. What matters to the consumer is, are we creating relevance and value in their life? And so when I look on and say, what is relevance and value that everybody's going to need, that we can do? This is not the only things that you need, but you're going to need academic support. Whatever you study, you're going to need somebody to help you learn it better, more efficiently, inexpensively, in the way you learn it best. That's the business we're in today. So that's the starting point. That has huge growth ahead of it, both domestically and internationally now, where we're already now in 190 countries, and the pandemic just accelerated that. The second thing is this learning to earning that I was talking about, which is, if I got an education, but not an employable skill, how do I get it? If I don't want to go to a formal education and get a degree employable, how do I get that? So what Chegg is programming through our skills groups, we have academic support. The second group is the skills group, and that was based on our acquisition of Thinkful. We're doubling the curriculum every year. We're reducing the cost every year, and we're building in 24/7 human help into the system that can scale online. So you can take it when you want. You're paying less than you would anywhere else. You're getting more support, and then we're going to get you a job at the end of it. And we're just going to continue to expand into those categories of what we call employable skills. I want this job, I need this skill, I'm going to get it. That then should expand into I'm in business, I'm in a category, I'm in finance. Well, how do I become expert in all of finance all the time? Because finance keeps changing. How do I become expert in marketing or in sales? And so it's not only training you to get the job, but we want products and services similar to what Chegg Study does, but for your profession, which you can subscribe to forever, because whenever you have a question or a problem or an issue, we want to be your go-to. We want to be your companion along that path. And then third one, which we're just starting in now, which is what my TV show Going From Broke was about, and what our site Chegg Money's about, is most of the young people are not getting on life issues. So they're struggling with personal finance. They're struggling with mental health. They're struggling with communication skills, with confidence. And so what is it that Chegg can do while you're in that age group that isn't necessarily about your academic career or your actual earning career, but about your ability to navigate that transition to adulthood? And it used to be what four-year colleges tried to do, but since the overwhelming majority of people do not go to a residential school, do not go to a four-year college, 10% of all students go to one community college system, which is in California. Over 2 million students just do that alone. And as people are going more and more online schools, the two largest schools in America are not-for-profit online. So as the world moves into that, where are people going to get life experiences? And so, our students keep asking us for that. They don't understand what a 401k is. They don't understand how to deal with mental health issues. So we're branching out into that as well. That will be sort of a longer haul for us. The first one is academic support on a global scale. That's going spectacularly well. The second one is actually skilling you up for a specific role. The next one will be to continue to stay with you through a career pathing in a category, and then life experience. We have a never-ending battle to help students solve their big problems.
All right. Well, I want to dive into a topic that is pretty central to both of our lives, which is company culture. Right. And, you all have amazing scores. Comparably, the company was just recognized, for being like an employer of choice in so many different categories and for diversity. And you talked about before we started the interview, how it's the central tenet of how to make a business successful these days, especially as you grow. What I want to ask you though is, you've been at Chegg when the business was struggling, and you've been at it when it's been on fire, right? And one of your teammates told us how she just joined in the last 3 months, and she was blown away by getting $1,000, credit for childcare and a $500 credit for her home office and an Aeron chair. Obviously those are things, as businesses have means and they're successful, they can do those things. I want to rewind 5 years ago when your business wasn't on fire like it was today. What are the things that company leaders should be most focused on when you may not be at the top of the mountain winning, to build that right culture? Because I think, winning cures a lot of other sins. It washes over a lot of things that maybe aren't done as well.
Revenue cures most sins.
Yeah. And so what did you focus on 5 years ago, and what do you focus on today to build a great culture?
So look, it's hard to look backwards because those were not great moments for me, for Chegg, for our team. But it's important. And so, when our stock dropped to $3.15, my mentor called me and he said, look, leaders lead. So you have to convince yourself that there's a path out of this, and you have to live it every day. And even if you have to manufacture that confidence, you have to show it, because CEOs, managers, they're like flight attendants. So I'm afraid of flying. So if you've ever been on a flight where there's turbulence, everybody first looks to the flight attendant. And if he or she is laughing and giggling or whatever, you calm down. If they're like, holy crap, diving for their seats, you go into panic mode. So as an executive, I talk to people that have been under high pressure situations. Ronnie Lott was one of them. For those of you who don't know him, he's won 4 Super Bowls, considered the best to ever play his position in the NFL. Hall of Fame, Rose Bowl. And I had him come in and tell the story about when the 49ers were losing to the Cincinnati Bengals in the Super Bowl after they had just scored. And Ronnie's like, we don't lose. I'm Disney World. Like, that's what we do. So the first thing was believing you can win. The second thing is, he said the leadership of Joe Montana at the time, who got into the huddle, he said to everybody, hey, who was a big time actor at the time in the crowd. So the offense got comfortable that, of course, we're going to win. So the first thing I did was try to, with my team, tell them I was committed. None of us were quitting. I was going to buy in for the next bunch of years, and they needed to buy in also. And if they weren't prepared to buy in, I respect it, but I'm going to help them find it, but I can't count on them for where we're going to go. And so I need an answer now. Like, you don't get a chance to call your spouse or significant other and ask for permission, either in or out. I was very nervous to do that because you don't know what the answer is going to be. Everybody on my team said they were in. By the way, every one of them but 2 are there now, and the 2 that aren't there retired. So they stayed through this problem. So the first thing was, second thing is believe. And so we needed to have a North Star. And so we said, culturally, we know that our mission externally is to put the student first. Culturally, let's put family first. Let's treat each other like a family. Let's acknowledge that life is not easy. Let's not make Chegg a place that adds stress or drama to your life. Let it be a place that people can come and do their best work, because it's a relief from the stress of their life. So the way to do that was to lay out a plan for the company. And I went before the company with Andy and my CFO and the team, and we said, this is where Chegg is going. And we said, companies that go through public transitions generally take 3 years. We showed the Adobe turnaround, the eBay turnaround, showed a bunch of companies, the Apple turnaround in the early days. So for 3 years, people are going to ignore us, deny us, shit on us. Don't worry about it. We're not going to worry about it. So we're never going to talk about the stock price, because it's not going to matter until this point. At this point, we're either achieving what we said and people will start to recognize it, or they won't. Then we brought in a bunch of people that we knew to give confidence that working at Chegg is still, like, if these people think we're okay, then we must be okay. And we had people, their generosity was amazing. Mark Andreessen or John Donahoe or Shantanu Narayan or Ashton Kutcher or Ronnie Lowe. We had senators and other people who cared about education. And they validated why Chegg was still a good place to work, regardless of what the stock price said. So we committed, we told a story, we got people to commit to the story. We built people's confidence that we were going to be a good culture that cared about people by saying family was going to be first. And then we built a series of programs through our brilliant HR department and benefits department to support the needs of our employees as they helped us overcome the challenges that we were facing. And then, honestly, something my wife told me, which is, whether you like it or not, when the boss walks into a room, people look at the boss. And if you look angry, they're going to be nervous. If you look worried, they're going to be worried. If you look happy and engaged and involved, then they're going to be happy, engaged, and involved. They're not going to worry about these other things. And I had an unbelievable mentor, a guy named Bill Ziff, who founded Ziff Davis, and his sons are marvelous, and all the bosses I had, Ronnie Sonnenberg, and JetBlue, and Eric Hippo, all these, Alicia Ivins, all these amazing bosses. What they said is the CEO's job is to be the mayor of a small village, to let everybody not worry if the company was going to go out of business or are we going to do anything wrong. Let them focus on the job at hand and not be occupied by all the other things that people can worry about by taking it off the table. Building confidence in yourself and that you're going to not going to worry about those things. And, people weren't going to come in and be surprised. We were going to be transparent. And we did all of those things. And then we prayed that the things we were doing had to work. And then they did. And then we doubled down. And the more success we got, the more confidence that people had in us and each other and the team. And we would celebrate those things. And we'd also acknowledge the things that didn't go well. And then that taught us to be transparent consistently, listen consistently, survey our employees consistently, take the feedback constructively, teach people how to give us constructive feedback, and ask them, how do we give you constructive feedback? So we went to something, called fast feedback, which honestly is just regular dialogue. So you don't scare employees by your once in a year meeting where you're trying to drudge up things from 9 months ago. And everybody panics for that meeting, but rather you tell people the good things they're doing and the things that you have questions on at the moment, so people get used to it. So we try to take the stress out of the job so that people could put their energy into doing a great job. And that's, part of the program that we put into place with amazing leadership on the C team that people just trust. And I'm grateful for them.
How do you run your team meetings now remotely? So how, you've got, I think, 1,900 or so global employees, right? So how often do you do all hands? How are you structuring your meetings with your leadership team? Like what have you found in a completely virtual environment that you're doing that's optimizing for a feeling of people feeling together with especially such a large company?
So we took a look at all of the elements. And the first thing we said is everybody's out. So we're all dealing with this. So we'll have a common experience, but not everybody's going to have the common experience inside their home. Some people are going to get sick. Some people have young children. Some people have no children. Some people are living away from their parents or in other countries or other cities. Some people are going to feel lonely. We actually went through all the things that we thought once we realized this wasn't going to end in 30 days. And we started to do the things, we started to try to do the things that we did best in person and tried to manufacture an authentic version of it online. So one of the things that I do a lot is, everybody knows what photo bombs were. I used to do meeting bombs. I'd come in the office, I would just drop into a meeting and engage anybody on any subject at the time. And so I started doing Zoom bombs. So I asked my team, I said, everybody, you need to talk to people all the time. You need to hold regular group meetings and let me know when it's appropriate for me to pop in, and I'll pop in. And I'll come in your weekly meetings from time to time. We hold monthly all hand meetings. We make the agenda shorter because we realize the attention span. We relieve people of the fee in every meeting because you can't, because your family is there. Like, it's not like remote work where you're choosing to work 8 hours a day and no one's in your house. So I communicate first every week on where we were, the success of the company, the things that we were learning, the things that we got feedback on, the things that we wanted to do, the childcare credit. We started programming things. We started programming things deliberately in the middle of the day so people understood it was okay to take a break in the middle of the day. We had a James Beard chef teach, parents and children how to cook together. We did physical stuff. We did mental stuff. We did meditation. We ended up getting celebrities and other people to do Ask Me Anything, CEOs of major companies, Goldman Sachs and places like that, who would do Ask Me Anythings with people. The ERG groups really had a chance to, manifest in a way that they wouldn't before because more people could join them. And we made sure all the C-level executives were participating in all of those things. So we had a team whose job it was to program Chegg culture and life every day through the technology we had. And we're still doing it because, my goodness, March 11th is going to be a 1-year anniversary of nobody at Chegg seeing each other in person. Mm-hmm. So what we said was, we're going to commit to this. And we actually told employees, we said, you know what, we're not coming back till January of 22 into the office. We may open them before then, but plan your life around that. You can live anywhere, right? And we started doing things like giving every Friday off so people could just take a mental break. We started doing things like we blocked all meetings before 9 a.m. so that people couldn't schedule, so that they could use that quote unquote commute time to feed their kids breakfast or get their act together or sleep a little later, whatever it was. We told people that you didn't have to attend every meeting, that somebody could catch you up on it. And the C's all had to live that life and back up that life. So we started giving people Fridays off in the summer. And then we went to no meetings Fridays after the summer ended. So you don't have to schedule anything formally, but you can catch up on stuff, but you're available if you need to, because the work still needs to be done. We took full days off. I gave everybody my birthday off, April 10th. So, only a month, it was clear to me that people were mentally exhausted. No one had dealt with this. So everybody gets a day off. It turns out, even though our policy is you can take a day off whenever you want, it's not really good unless everybody takes it off. We still have a culture where someone's going to screw it up by writing an email to you because you're off, right? So we said everybody's off. Then we gave a full week off. And as I said, we gave every Friday off in the summer. So what we did was we listened and we put ourselves in empathetic shoes. And fortunately, myself and Andy are the two old people on our C team. The rest of them all had children. All were going through the same thing that our employees were going through. So that's how we came up with the benefits. And we kept saying, what can we do to give more? But the fact is, when you're not paying for everybody's lunch and you're not for travel, you have a lot more capital to invest in your employees. And the commitment we had was we weren't going to bank it. We were going to invest in our future, which was the company and our people.
Yeah. I think that's absolutely amazing. And so I'm so appreciative.
Those were my ideas. Those are the ideas of employees and of my C-level executives, of Heather Porter and John Fillmore and Nathan Schultz and Deborah Thompson and Esther Lem. These are the people that said, our whole future. Look, the reality is, Jason, you know this because you're even a smaller company. I live in the heart of Silicon Valley, and trying to compete with people at these remarkable companies that can pay anything. Well, you have to differentiate. Our view of differentiation was have a mission that mattered, use that as a screen to bring in people that cared about that mission, and then invest in and make it a point to say, we don't want the 9-month or 18-month turnover. So we started celebrating people that were here a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. And so, like anything else, once you put a light on something, you can make it better. And once you tell people what you think are important, they can make it important. And, I learned that from a lot of great people, and I'll pass that along to anybody that's listening.
The statement of our business is transparent and rewarding work. It's right there on our public homepage. It's on all of our swag. And I think one of the things that just always stood out for me about you, Dan, is from the moment that we met and started talking, just how unbelievably open and vulnerable and transparent you are. I mean, it's pretty rare to have, somebody with as much success as you've had in a public light and public CEO really be as open right away with a whole group of folks about, hey, this is what we did that didn't work, and this is what failed. And, I just think so many times, folks want to reinforce only the good things, but it's always the tough things, the hard things we all have to go through that get us farther along in life. And so, thank you again for today, just going there like you always do and sharing so much of your journey and the company's journey. I think if there are more leaders out there like you, this is going to be a lot better world and place. And it's clear to see why so many people are rooting for the company's success for, who you are and who you stand for. And so thank you for your time today and for sharing your journey and your lessons. It's an amazing way for us all to get to kick off 2021 together.
Well, even though I'm old, and I am, I like to feel like the journey will continue for a while. But I'll leave you with this. First of all, thank you. And second of all, I'm the product of a lot of great people that invested in me when they didn't need to. And so what stuck with me as I got older and as my team got older, and I had people like Heather Porter on my team who said, I'm going to have your back no matter what. I'm not going to bail on you in tough times. Reminded me that at the end of the day, these are all things that we achieve together. There's no, right? At the end of the day, I want to be proud of what I do. I want the people that work with me to be proud of what they do. I want my children and my wife to be proud of me. I want to embarrass them less. Not easy to do as a father, particularly during a pandemic where they get to watch you work every day. But these are hard jobs. Not only the ones that we have, but the ones that the people who work for us have. And so what would give us the arrogance to think that we knew the answers to all these things? And, I've had a lot of privilege in my life, and I didn't even realize it was privilege until I look back on it now, right? The places I lived, the people that I met, the color of my skin, all you can just name it. But it didn't feel easy on that journey. And what I learned, the network matters. And people look at networking and they say, it's transactional. And what I learned from all these amazing people is the network itself is the end. It's not a means to an end. It's the only desired outcome. And from that network will come opportunities to either get better, make somebody better. But the joy is the journey in doing it with people that you love and trust you. And so I'm not afraid to admit that I needed help along the way, or I screwed up along the way, because so many people helped me through that. I want to give that back. And so, to the degree that I can, I try. And people are still investing in me. I keep screwing up, but that's a discussion for a different day. Anyway, thank you, Jason. Thanks for acknowledging Chegg. Thanks for continuing to stay in contact with me and being an advocate for the work we're trying to do. And thanks everybody for listening.
Of course. I know there's lots of people that are continuing to root for your success, and for everyone that joined us again, thank you so much. Here's to a happy, healthy, and successful year for all of you. And thank you for continuing to be part of our If I Knew Then series. We're going to have a lot more incredible CEOs like Dan throughout the year. And so we're wishing you all the best. Take care, everybody.